Je gaat kijken naar de persconferentie waar ik vanochtend aanwezig was in Pathé Tuschinski Amsterdam. In de aanwezigheid van de voltallige pers mochten de vragen gesteld worden aan Oliver Stone, de beroemde Hollywood-regisseur die een nieuwe film heeft gemaakt, Nuclear Now. Ik had 5 vragen voorbereid. Helaas mocht ik er maar 2 stellen, maar het waren wel 2 belangrijke vragen. Na ongeveer 28 minuten kun je mijn vragen vinden, maar het hele interview hebben we live gezet. Veel kijkplezier.
I would like to start with Eline van Ekert from the Volkskrant. Eline, you will get a microphone.
Yes, thank you very much. So my question is, the film carries a very positive outlook on the use of nuclear energy against climate change. And it sometimes feels to me a little bit like the potential dangers are brushed over. So my question is nuclear energy really so flawless that it possesses no disadvantages?
Okay, I'm sorry, my hearing's not great, but it sometimes feels like...
There's no.
Louder.
There's nothing negative with the nuclear energy. So
Okay, what else?
And
That's
so,
it?
yeah.
That's it? Yeah, well... Look, I'm not... first of all, I'm not a scientist. I'm a filmmaker, so I'm dramatizing a book that I bought called A Bright Future by Josh Goldstein and Stefan Skavist, a Swedish nuclear scientist, which you know it's listed in the press kit. I suppose you find it, the name of it. It's a very good book, came out in 2019, and it addressed this issue of what is going wrong in the world. It talked about all the forms of climate change, and it asked a very reasonable question. It said, why are not renewables working? We spent trillions of dollars on renewables, and here we are with more and more CO2 in the atmosphere. And it answers the questions, I think, in a very rational way. So what I set out to do was to interpret the book with the help of Josh Goldstein, and this is the result. The negatives of nuclear power were shown in the early part of the film with the accident at Chernobyl. And it explained the other 2 accidents that happened and that there was there was no loss of human life. But the one at Chernobyl was. And it was described and talked about very openly. We're not hiding anything. As in any industrial process, nuclear has its dangers. It has to be handled very carefully and has to be supervised, which it is, very closely. If it gets sloppy, accidents do happen. We pointed to the gas explosion at Bhopal. We pointed to with many more casualties, 20,000 casualties, 100,000 wounded. That's a gas explosion. It happens all the time. There was an ammonia explosion. A railroad went off its track in Pennsylvania recently with an ammonia wasteland. There's all kinds of industrial accidents, mining, and all kinds of residue from, as you can see, from coal. We have all the spillings. So we're discussing relatively the dangers of each one, relatively, and we showed you the chart for the amount of deaths per. I don't know how much more we can show, but we can talk about every little problem, but it would be a much longer documentary. We were barely able to cover in an hour and 3/4, about an hour 45. We were barely able to cover the subject. We didn't even get into the subject of uranium mining, or for the later stages, what is going on now in nuclear energy in 2024. We spent a lot of time back in the 1970s when this thing came to a stop in the advanced countries. Now our problems are enormous. They're much bigger because we have the poor world, the third world, so-called third world countries are requiring more and more energy. 1 billion people have what we have, more or less, and 7 billion are coming. So it seems to us that the dangers of nuclear compared to where the overall picture of our world is, I think we were very fair in describing it up front. the dangers, and let's move on with the argument, and let's get to the essence. How do we save this planet from climate change? That was my subject matter. It was not my subject was not to argue nuclear energy, because I think that's an old and tired argument.
Thank you, Oliver. This question has been answered, I think. What is your second question, Amy?
My second question is, how do you think we should change the public's often still quite negative opinion on
No, it isn't.
the subject?
No, it's not negative. The polls, on the contrary, are positive. In the United States, they've gone upward. It's now, what it showed on the film, what was it, 63% or something like that was positive. Yeah, people are seeing it in a different light, definitely since the film came out. Film came out in 22. What?
22.
In 2022, and even in this last year and a half, we've sensed a change. When we took the film out on the road, we couldn't get distribution at first because nuclear energy had a sinister ring, because people didn't know anything, but it just had nuclear. The American attitude you might sum it up as, oh yeah, I remember nuclear, we had it, we tried it, but it didn't quite work. I don't know why it didn't work, but it didn't quite work, so we moved on, and now we're into renewables. That's the kind of stupid response that you can get, a very superficial one, because nuclear never left the scene. It was suspended, so to speak, in Western Europe to some degree and in America, but it kept going in Russia, China, and the rest of the world. So there's been a fundamental misunderstanding of nuclear energy, and that's what motivated me to do this picture, although it's not my domain. It is a scientific area, but apparently the science are not getting their message across. The question was what else? It was
to change the public.
What?
That the public opinion has a negative image of nuclear energy.
The what?
Negative image of nuclear energy. That's not
Yeah.
true.
Well, that negativity, as we explained, came from the original confusion between what is a nuclear bomb and what is nuclear energy. Nuclear bomb is 95% enriched uranium. It's very difficult to make a bomb, very complex. Nuclear energy is way down here, 2 to 3% enriched uranium. Sometimes they go a little higher, sometimes they go to 5%. They can even go to 20% without any explosion, dangerous explosion happening. It is a whole world of difference between 95% and 1-2%. Big difference. So people have this impression that a nuclear plant's going to blow up. It's not going to blow up like a bomb. It's not going to be Hiroshima or Nagasaki, not even close. So that's why there's been this misunderstanding at a fundamental level. People think they're putting a nuclear bomb in their backyard. It's crazy. And because of this confusion,
Oliver.
You have to blame the public relations of the science. They don't have much public relations. But the oil companies are very good with public relations, and so, as we know, are the environmentalists.
Oliver, and journalist, I'd like to meet you to the campaign director of We Planet, who is going to sit here next to you.
He's joining us.
Oh, Joel? Nice to see you. Joel here is from We Planet, and we're here because of We Planet, which is
because of you.
a nuclear organization that is relatively recent. You want to talk about?
Very short, what is We Planet, Joel?
So We Planet is the pro-nuclear Greenpeace. We are here to change the environmental movement so that we don't keep making the mistakes that Oliver Stone's brilliant film showed happened over the last century. We've run out of time, so we're here to change the face of the environmental movement, to be pro-nuclear, pro-science, pro-humanity, and actually fix the climate crisis once and for all, rather than just saying good things and hoping for the best.
Is this microphone working?
Yes.
Did that microphone work?
Yes.
This microphone works, so I can hand it over to you
working?
if you have a question for
yeah.
Joel. Who is the second person who wants to ask a question? And here in the front, can you come with a microphone?
We're going to get a lot of dumb questions with two questions per person for 1
switch it.
hour. Then we're in for it.
Your name and your
It's
affiliation.
really badly handled. It should have
Yes,
been.
my name is Jonathan Krispijp from Ongehoord Nederland, and I have 2 questions. The first one is, could you give us your assessment of why people have been intentionally kept away from considering nuclear power as a viable mainstream source of energy?
Well, same question.
Yeah, more or less the same question, yes.
Well, I think because of the conflation of ignorance with the bomb and nuclear energy. They're not the same, as I explained. The enrichment of uranium is quite different. A bomb is very difficult to make, and nuclear energy has been here for 70 years, and it's been working, except for one bad accident, which if you compare it to other industries, it's the least dangerous of industries, the least dangerous, with the least amount of deaths. But it's like people are more scared of flying than they are of driving, but they're in more danger when they drive, you know? So we've got to grow up and mature and conquer our fear, as Franklin Roosevelt once said. We're living in fear, and it's unnecessary fear.
Your second question?
The second question is, what do you think is required for humanity to move beyond that and accept it as a possibility?
To move beyond?
Beyond that, ignorance.
Beyond that, what's that?
The ignorance related to...
Huh?
The ignorance related to nuclear energy, how we can make sure people move.
To move beyond the nuclear...
Ignorance.
Well, how do you, it takes education, it takes a certain amount of what this film is doing. And, you know, you have to consider one other thing is Hollywood. Hollywood has played no favors to nuclear. From the very beginning, it's been monsters, Godzillas, everything that can go wrong is blamed on radioactivity. A spider is radioactive, and then he bites a man, and the man turns into Spider-Man. All kinds of comic book
The Simpsons.
Allusions, cartoons, and of course you have, you haven't seen the film, I guess. You have not seen the film.
I didn't see it.
We cover some of this stuff. The Rockefeller Foundation in 1956 came out with a study. This is a Rockefeller Foundation. They're very authoritative, but at the same time, and they have a lot of money, but they also represent Standard Oil, the old Standard Oil, and they made their fortune that way. So they came out with this study that said any amount of radioactivity, any amount, is harmful to the body, which is not true. And it's been completely denied by science more than once. It was first denied in Watson and Crick experiments on the DNA in the 1950s, and most recently a Nobel Prize was given in 2015 to 3 scientists who did another explanation that the DNA in our body is a wonderful, wonderful part of our organs, that our personality, that heals the body as it lives. So there's the natural low-level radiation that hits us every day. We're radiation in this room, a radiation when we walk in the sun, radiation when you go to the dentist, radiation when you live at a high altitude or are in an airplane. Radiation's everywhere. It's low-level radiation, and it's repaired in your body by the DNA. That's what it does, among other things, many other things.
It is covered in the movie. I saw it yesterday, so I would like to give someone else the opportunity to ask a question. I see a hand over there.
2 questions per. She's out. Fuck these Dutch people. Fuck this Dutch. That's not good. It's just two per. You're encouraging people to ask stupid things.
Good afternoon. My name is Constance. I'm from the Dutch press agency ANP. I would like to ask you, how concerned are you about climate and its change, and how do concerns about climate change impact your daily life?
Of course. I'm sorry. Is this working?
Yes.
Of course I'm concerned. That's why I got involved in this project, because I'm not a proponent of nuclear energy. When Jane Fonda was running around and Ralph Nader in the 1970s, listen, I didn't know the argument. I didn't study it. Like most people, I was miseducated, and I believed this woman. I believed Ralph Nader, who had a good record on automobile safety. Ralph Nader said one accident in Cleveland, Ohio would wipe out Cleveland, and also it would drift into Pennsylvania and all that. He made that same mistake that everyone's making. He thought nuclear energy had the power of a bomb. So he was talking out of his ass. And he recently criticized the movie. He came back at the age of 90 and criticized the movie, but I wish you'd seen the response he got on his Twitter. He got like, I think, thousands of people saying, you know, wake up, you're a dinosaur. I like Ralph Nader, but I think he's out of touch. But this thing was very dangerous. This was an international tragedy. What happened with the slowdown, when the United States stopped building and Japan stopped building and Korea, all these things added up. There was a general slowdown where we could have been now if we had kept going in the direction that President Eisenhower began with Atoms for Peace. And John Kennedy continued. Kennedy called for a lot more nuclear power. If we had continued in that direction, the United States would now be like France. We would probably be 70% nuclearized society. That is a huge amount. We're now 20% nuclearized. We would be at 70, assume, by 2010 or something like that. And the world would be following because they follow and Russia was doing its job too. They're at 20%, but they didn't keep, they still build, but they're not. The trend is to go with all this mixed bag that's not working. That's the trend. So that's sort of, the world follows very much the patterns of the West. Not always, but very often. So that has to change.
Thank you. Do you have a second question?
How are you going to get politicians to see your film?
How can we make sure politicians saw our film? Politicians.
Oh, that's one I can't control that. This is the film. I put it out there. I would say in the United States, the politics are pretty bipartisan. Democrat and Republican support nuclear, although there are opponents. In Europe, you have the Green Party, which is ferocious in Germany. Ferocious, but I don't know. These people are very related to. If people in there, older people, do not learn and do not change, there's no hope. My hope, of course, lies in the younger generation that really know what's going on, and they know they need nuclear energy because climate change is a much bigger threat than any explosion of 1 or 2 bombs. Yes, war is always an issue, but we've been moderately responsible about war, and no bombs have been dropped, thank God, since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And we know the dangers of that, bombs. But this is not, we're not talking about bombs, we're talking about nuclear energy, I repeat. So the younger generation is a great hope, but I think many older people too have changed their ways. I've talked to people who've seen the film and they say, I've changed my mind. Now, it's no point going and arguing about this 1970s issue because it's really, we're beyond that. We've got to talk about what forms of atomic energy we want to use, what kinds. We got to talk about costs. We got to talk about grids, how to redo the grids, how to accommodate this. This is many complicated issues still. Many countries are different. Some have a lot of wind. Some countries have a lot of sun. Some countries have a lot of water power, but other countries have none of that. So they have, these are all issues that have to be worked out specifically.
Oliver, we should mention we were invited to the COP28 in Dubai.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'll give you a quick history. We were originally came out. We didn't have any distribution, so we self-distributed. Max and our other producers put up the money, and we self-distributed the film in the United States. Netflix turned us down because they said it was a good film, but it's not what they're looking for. What are they looking for? Anyway.
And I'll add that we're all going to the European Parliament tomorrow, so we've got a screening in front of members of Parliament.
We're going to show the film tomorrow to the European Parliament.
all of the big parties, essentially,
European
except the
Parliament.
Greens, are supportive of that.
Well,
We've got a room, 100 MEPs have already booked to come and see it. So there'll be this tomorrow, but in front of those who matter. And I think the really important thing to notice in terms of that question about politicians that we experience as we plan it, we've got chapters in countries around Europe that are doing this, is that the politicians are the problem, actually. The public wants nuclear. The polling is really, really clear. In every European country, the support is way over 60% for nuclear. In the Nordics, it's over 85% public support. And even in Germany, the problem child for energy in Europe, 52% of the public support nuclear energy. So the public wants this. It's elite, green, fantasist politicians who are the issue.
Can't hear you.
And so that's why we're organising things like this. We're bringing Oliver over, and we're off to the Parliament tomorrow to get this in front of politicians, because they need to know that the public is not on their side if they're going back on this.
Our history of exhibition is kind of interesting because we came out in the United States. As I said, we self-distributed, so we're on several platforms and available, but obviously without a big server to show it, we don't have the head start. But we've gotten so many favorable reactions. I did a lot of talk shows that are not mainstream, not corporate, but a lot of call it alternate websites, and they do have impact with an interesting part of the population who really pay attention. So I did a lot of that, and then we opened in countries, some countries, 15 or 20.
Yeah,
What was the first country we did?
We did Italy.
What?
Italy,
Yeah, we
Spain.
opened in Italy, which is no nuclear, and we had a great reception. So it seems like people sometimes are different than the elite who run them. We know the EU has strange leadership you have in Europe, here based in Brussels, but we get to people. We get to people and we get to young people. But then we got to Davos. We went to Davos in Switzerland to show it. And here's Davos, and all the brilliant people of the world, the elite, so to speak, supposed to be so smart. And they're discussing very confidently the future of the world. I was shocked because nuclear was not even on the agenda of discussion. And we raised a hand and we said, you know, what's wrong with nuclear? Why are you guys not even talking about it? And I met with some very big shots, and they all admitted they like nuclear, they're pro-nuclear, but they don't discuss it.
Thank you.
This is like the, how do you call it, the black sheep sitting at the table there. It's crazy. They're not talking about it. So we go from Davos and we go to COP.
Invited to the COP28.
Yeah, let me tell the story. COP28 recently, and it was on the agenda, thank God, finally. And we did it. We you know, it's getting there. And then recently we did, what was the last thing?
Spain, Brussels.
No, something else. We did another conference. Anyway, I forgot. We did another conference, and it's coming. And we got to get the film out there. We're not the only ones saying this, you know.
I would like to give everyone the opportunity to ask a question, Oliver. Sorry.
Yeah, well, you know, you are the one who said
speed
2
up.
questions per. You set the fucking
Perfectly,
rules.
yeah.
I didn't.
Can I ask
Bad
the-
rules too. Michael Schellenberg wrote a book about it. You know, he's good. He's smarter than me, but he knows what he's talking about. And there's another person who was mentioned to me last night who wrote a book. Joel, were you the one who mentioned the person?
Yeah, so new book, I don't know if it's been published in Dutch, but Hannah Ritchie's Not the End of the World is absolutely crucial. It's setting out the numbers, and it's truly astonishing, actually.
Hannah Ritchie.
Hannah Ritchie.
What's the name of the book?
Not the End of the World.
Hannah Ritchie, Not the End of the World. He says this is even better than Schellenberg's book. Hannah Ritchie, Not the End of the World. Get it published here in Holland. It's the only way to get this information out there. Hannah Ritchie.
It is available, this book.
Write that down.
The person behind you was raising his hand.
Compliments for your beautiful tan. I watched the movie yesterday with my wife, and I'm totally on the same page that nuclear is the way to go. But I also have some skeptical opinions on it.
Sure.
You mentioned Davos. In your documentary, you also mentioned the power of the Rockefeller Foundation, that the power didn't decrease. They're still there. And also the US dollar is backed by oil, not by gold. So how realistic is it that the US will change to nuclear while their dollar is backed by oil, they will literally dig their own grave. Isn't it irrealistic to think that that will ever happen?
What is the name of your outlet?
Black box.
Thanks.
You've raised some very key geopolitical questions, which are beyond my ability to solve. The dollar hopefully will fail because of the policies, military policies of the United States. We have perhaps overreached, and people will see it. Increasingly, you see China and Russia are pulling away from the dollar, and especially Russia is running its economy very well, despite all the sanctions of the West. This is the kind of example. We're seeing more and more sanctions and less effect. So we hope to have a world where we have multi-dimensional, multipolar world. That would be the ideal. Russia has always been a responsible citizen with nuclear, has always developed nuclear, developed the first nuclear civilian reactor in 1954 at Obninsk. You saw that in the film. They've done, but you know, they would have done more if they had been encouraged, but they have never been encouraged to do it. They have built the best, probably the nuclear reactor in the world up to date, which is at Belyarsk in the Ural Mountains. It's the 600, but they're building at 1200 or an 800. They're building an 800. Very expensive though. It may not work as an overall technology, but what I'm saying, our knowledge of nuclear is expanding all the time. We get better and better at it. America is pursuing, because it's not a authoritarian government. Russia has Rosatom, which is a huge civilian agency. China has its agency. France, which has 70% nuclear energy. France has IDF. All these countries have government agencies. They make the changes. They put the money in. America is still capitalist and socialist mixed. So we have 70 companies in America chasing this new SMRs. SMRs are small modified reactors.
Small modular reactors.
What?
Small modular reactors.
Small modular reactors. Small modular reactors. They are SMRs. They're very, they don't have the power of the big ones, but they're important because they can be shipped everywhere. They can be moved around by boat. They're put in isolated communities. They do a hell of a, they can do a good job, and who knows how big they can get, how powerful they can get. Right now, it's still in the development chain. It's a developmental stage in the United States. They still haven't built one. They built one in Russia, and they shipped it to Pevek in the Arctic. They built one in China called the Linglong 1, and they're going to build a lot more of them. China has promised us to build 150 reactors by 2038. China is taking this very seriously because they have a huge coal problem. So all this is working itself out. Russia exports a huge amount of ready-made reactors. To Bangladesh, to India, they build them and they send them there to these countries.
Your documentary is an eye-opener for people that hardly know anything about nuclear energy, but our leaders and climate ministers, they should be informed about the knowledge that you have. Why are they not acting in that direction? I mean, does that mean that we cannot trust them to be sincere about climate change or wanting to move forward with nuclear? What does it tell us about our leaders?
I cannot really answer your question because I don't know your country and I don't know the relationship with the government, but some countries do respond, some ministers respond. The United States, as I say, it's a bipartisan issue. Some idiots, conservative people who really believe the most outrageous things do agree with people on the left that nuclear energy works. On the other hand, you get people like, what's his name? You saw in the film yesterday, the Texas Cruz, who says, what does he say? Science is not.
Yeah, he's a climate. I can't remember.
Science is not a fact. religion or something. It's so stupid, but that's what you have. People like that in politics. They represent the people. Generally speaking, the people move towards progress, generally speaking. But we have many instances in the United States when we go the other way. As you saw, we had a civil war, it was successful, we freed the slaves, but then we had after many years, we had a relapse, and then they were hanging people again and lynching them, and history moves that way. We started smoking in the United States. Why? I mean, because the advertising companies decided that they wanted to market for women, and so they showed women smoking in the 1920s, and that really expanded the market on cigarettes. And they knew the cigarettes were bad. They knew they were bad for years, and they kept making them. Same thing is true about climate change. We now know, because of the research, because of files that have come out, declassified files, that several of the oil companies, Shell among them, knew that climate change would be the result of warming the planet. They knew it back in 1970s, but they kept going. And on the contrary, they obscured the issue, but with their advertising. They became deniers through leaks and through all the ways that they work to deny, to say that climate change or whatever the environmentalists were proposing would limit our lives, would change our lives, reduce our footprint. Part of the reason now is that renewables are very popular with oil companies because they found a way to partner with renewables. That is to say, when you have sun panels, let's say, they don't work all the time. You need a backup. What is your backup? What is the easiest backup? The easiest backup is gas. That's the oil company. The gas comes easy to back up, but it has methane in it. Methane gas is horrible, toxic. It goes up into the atmosphere. You don't even see it. It's invisible. You can see it with an infrared camera. It's all over the. We show a picture of the whole Earth, and we see the methane gas.
Sorry, Oliver. I have a very practical thing. We have to move.
Yeah, but I'm saying you give everybody two questions. Giving one. Make one question then. You make these rules. I'm answering questions that are important.
Very, very good. But I wanted to give everyone the opportunity.
Fuck. Everybody, no, don't give everybody the opportunity.
Yes. Hello. I'm Anouk. I'm from the Dutch financial newspaper. I watched a documentary, and it's about a lot about misunderstandings around Fukushima and Chernobyl, and how it is built. It has been built. To what extent do you think the fear of people of these nuclear disasters is in fact justified?
Didn't hear a word.
She saw the film, and she would like you to revisit the 3 accidents.
Louder, please.
She saw the film, and she would like to, about Fukushima, Chernobyl, and the 3 Miles Island. So that you explained the film, and do you think is enough for people not to be feared by?
She's saying, what was the last thing you said?
Not to be feared about
the 3 accidents.
Yeah.
So is she pro?
No, I don't know.
What did she want to know about the 3 accidents?
If people have overcome the.
Well, I don't know. You're asking me a psychological question. You know, listen. There's 3 accidents in the film. We talk about it very clearly. What happened? We explain it, and if people still want to be scared, they can be scared. I mean, people can live in fear, or they can live with courage. Our lives depend on it. The way you live. Some people will never leave the house. They always see crime everywhere. Some people don't want to open the icebox. You know, I'm not a psychologist for that. I think we need to live. Any industry, anything, oil, gas. Have you seen how filthy they are? If you look at the planet, all the pilings come out of coal and the toxicity of oil and the leaks, the methane. It's all around us. Mercury, arsenic, lead, cadmium. There's spillings all over the country in America. They just throw it out. The coal companies just throw it out. So that they're just lying around. People, their water is polluted. They're right outside the house. Their canals in some places. You know, you've read about these stories. Some town, like what was that place in Detroit? They can't even drink the water, and that's been now 10 years. They still can't drink the water there in Detroit. It's crazy. I mean, we worry about stuff like nuclear energy, which is God's savior sent to us as a miracle, and we instead of all we talk about is that instead of talking about the shit in our backyard that we build up and goes into the atmosphere and becomes part of the climate change problem. Our focus is all screwed up, and that's partly the media because they're really stupid. A lot of the media are really stupid, and they go with a headline. The headline is nuclear bomb in your backyard. That's the headline, and that's not correct.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate from our position that the massive responsibility on all of you and all of your colleagues in this room, that journalists have been historically a major part of the problem here. We all share the same psychological fear about radiation, but as Oliver has said, it's completely established now that there is a threshold at which a small amount of radiation is perfectly safe. And so the communication of risk in public discourse through journalists is now more important than ever. We need to get it straight. Climate change is the existential risk that we're all facing, and that nuclear power is not a risk at all. And so it might be a nice headline to say this is scary and some radiation is being released if there's going to be another accident, but look at the hysteria around Fukushima for something that didn't actually kill anyone. That is irresponsible journalism by the global press. And so it's all back on you, essentially, and your colleagues. So go out there and help improve this, because otherwise we're not going to face climate change and we're all going to be completely fucked. So, yeah, thanks for your attention.
The next question, please.
My name is Boudewijn Geels. I work for Het Financiële Dagblad. A very strong argument for nuclear power would be also for politicians towards their voters. We can all keep consuming as we do now. Can we?
An argument is, can we keep consuming the consumption? Can we keep consuming?
Yeah, I believe we can as long as we expand our nuclear capacity, baseload. And that, I think that's very optimistic. That's why these two scientists called the book A Bright Future. Because we can, the world can be even better. We don't have to make it worse. The problem is climate change. Presumably, if we clean up the atmosphere, we can do a lot more. No one has any idea yet of the power of nuclear energy. The man who in the film shows you the tip of his finger is not kidding. That's worth 1 million tons of coal. That's the kind of energy we're talking about. And if it's used well, I mean, you've seen films of Flash Gordon, you've seen the future, spaceships coming and going. I don't know, the future's inconceivable. It's bigger than we know. And it's such a shame that in the earth is this power, this uranium. How do I know there's not other elements that have not been discovered and researched? There's so much more in the world than we know. And I think everything is, we can look at everything again as we get brighter and brighter and brighter. That's not to say it's AI, it's our minds. It's our own investigation. Scientists built AI. Scientists have discovered uranium and made it better and better usage of it. It's up to us. I think the human being, his capacity is enormous. I don't agree at all with Extinction Rebellion people who say we have to reduce our footprint and so forth and so on. We're not going to do that realistically. People are going to want to fly, they're going to want to drive, they want to go faster, they want to do more and more and more and more. That's the kind of world we're in. The only thing is if we can avoid war between ourselves.
Next question, please. Here's a finger, a hand. Shall I walk? It's quicker.
I complained. I said one question each. It's working.
I'm Mr. Stelt. It's a huge topic here in the Netherlands as well. The plans from the government are to build a couple nuclear power plants in the next 15 years, but still lots of people are against it. It's a small country. Would you have a nuclear power plant in your own backyard? And what would you say to the people to take away those concerns?
would you be okay to have yourself in your backyard?
I've heard that.
Yes. And what you will say to the people who are afraid? Because
I mean, I don't know what else to say. I told you twice now that a nuclear energy in your backyard is not a bomb. It's your friend.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, but would you have a power plant in your own backyard?
Of course I would. What are you, nuts? I mean, I showed it in the film. It is a boon to mankind. It would power my entire house. I'd get rid of all the other junk I have.
And your next question was?
Yeah, the next question, because...
I mean, if you're scared of it, I don't understand why you're scared of it. Go visit a couple of nuclear reactors. You have to handle this material carefully. I've never said otherwise. The supervision is necessary. And presumably at that point in time, if they can deliver something to your house, that it will be very safely produced and distributed and handled. They're not going to put a dangerous toxicity in your house, I assume. Okay? These are products that will be, like all products, carefully. By the way, the nuclear industry is the most supervised industry in the world. What they call waste, they know everything. They know every cubic inch of waste. And as I showed in the film, all the waste the United States has used since World War II is containable in a Walmart size. It's not a lot of waste because it's so concentrated. Whereas, take a look at oil, take a look at gas, take a look at coal. So much waste.
Right, yeah, I don't disagree. But the next thing is you talk about a lot about also about fission and fusion, topics that are also handled in for the mass media in the movie Oppenheimer very recently. Do you think a movie like that works for this whole subject or against it?
I liked Oppenheimer as a movie. I voted for it, and I think it's a very well-made movie. And I was offered the book actually a while ago, and it was a very difficult book to adapt to the screen. The movie does its job of showing a man who's indecisive. He wants to play both sides. He plays the government role and he plays the civilian role, and there is a confusion, and he obviously comes into conflict. That's the movie. The issue of nuclear power is never addressed in the movie. It's always about the nuclear bomb. Oh, and that obviously is not good because people always think, oh, this is about nuclear. It's not about nuclear. It's about the nuclear bomb. I just trying to make that point, okay? So it really has nothing to do with our film. Unfortunately, came out at the same time, and we're arguing that nuclear is positive. Maybe we were crazy at that point to bring it out, but we didn't know that this film was coming out. Oppenheimer, by the way, I mean, this is another argument. I made another movie called Untold History of the United States in 2012. It's 12 hours long if you have a chance to look at it. It's a very good documentary. And very clearly, I worked with a historian with it, Peter Kuznick. In the chapter 4-5, we talk about why the United States did not have to drop the bomb on Japan. There was no need for the bomb to be dropped on Japan. And in fact, we show that the United States wanted to prove to the Soviet Union at that point that we had the bomb because the Soviet Union was moving on Japan, as they had promised Roosevelt they would. They were moving towards Japan from Manchuria. They had just defeated the Japanese army. In other words, the Russians would have been in Japan a lot sooner than the United States. The United States were 6 months away from invasion of Japan. So there's a lot of bullshit about this whole story about the atomic bomb in World War II saved, now it's 1 million American lives. That is absolute horseshit. Originally, the original estimate is if we were able to do the invasion, which would have been 5 to 6 months away, General Marshall predicted 30,000 casualties. 30,000 grew into 1 million. That shows you how crazy the world, how people hype things. Hype, you know what the word hype means? Sensationalize. That is the biggest problem in the world I see, is media sensationalizing everything. Murder, bombs, they love it. This is a dangerous, dangerous occupation. If you're in the media, you have to be more...
Thank you, the Telegraaf, for asking this question. Is there another person who likes, the person who has not asked a question yet? Yes.
I'm trying to get through this hour without talking to anybody.
You take the question for what you take the question
for
for what you
newspaper?
want.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'd like to ask
Louder.
a main reason that in Holland we haven't built more nuclear power plants is that they are really, really, really expensive. And that argument is so much in your movie that it's not just so profitable to have more power plants, nuclear power plants. Could you reply on that? Could you comment on that argument?
The cost. One of the arguments why people, for example in Holland, why people are not so keen on nuclear power plants, because it's too expensive, the cost. So.
Well, yeah, this is expensive because of, in America it's expensive now because of all the regulations that they have to go through, which is like hoops, and that was done by the environmentalists. In the film we have one of the leading environmentalists tell me, I'm very proud of the fact that we put so many regulations in. Well, I don't know if you've ever had a business, but regulations can destroy a business too. But the truth is, the United States, we cannot build anymore anything big. We had no success with the harbor in Boston. I mean, we took 15, 20 years. It went way over budget. We can't build a bridge, a superhighway. We just can't. We don't have the infrastructure anymore. So we ship out our needs to China. The Oakland Bay Bridge that we showed in the film, you saw the film, was built in China and shipped into the United States in parts. So we didn't burn any coal in California, but we burned the coal in China. That's what's going on. And other countries too, European countries also. Germany's industrial base has disintegrated. The countries that are building and can build fast and cheaply are China, Russia, India, and so forth. And maybe Bangladesh will be turning out nuclear reactors pretty soon. That's the way to do it. And of course, in America, we're building SMRs. And we haven't even built that. We promised it. So we're 2028. We're just not the country we used to be. And of course, there's the profit motive. General Electric and Westinghouse are two of the biggest firms. They can still build big certain things. They can build gas turbines, and they can build wind turbines. They can build a certain amount of tunnel because they get a lot of money out of it, and they're paid, and they still do it. But when a nuclear division of General Electric and Westinghouse is small, relatively small, and there's no motive. But we can build faster. But we have to go, and I would suggest we use Koreans. The Koreans, they work hard, and they do it well. They did a great job up until the 1990s. They did a great job. Up until 2005, Pandora came along. Anyway, the Koreans stopped building for a while because of a Korean movie that, again, sensationalized Fukushima. So the Koreans stopped. But now they're getting finally back on track. But Korea and Taiwan, these places, and certainly China, that's why we have to be partners with China. We have to be partners with people. We have to get away from this mentality that this gentleman raised about our dollar and our world. It doesn't belong to us anymore. We have to be part of the world. We're not running the world. We have to be part of the world. It's a multipolar world.
And just to add in some numbers that might be helpful for your piece, if you look up what the average time it takes to build a reactor globally, it's 8 years at the moment. It's actually pretty quick. China and Russia, 5 years. The problem of slow and very expensive nuclear power plants is an American, European problem. It's a problem that we've created, environmentalists have created in particular. If you have a look again at Hannah Ritchie's numbers on this, she's an authority who crunched the numbers, the IEA's numbers on this as well. And this is also the case with cost as well. So the idea that nuclear power is expensive is just extremely short vision. It's expensive to build it up front, but then you have it for 80 years. It's a cathedral, it lasts for generations, and then it becomes very, very cheap, and that's the kind of thing we're looking at. The problem with wind and solar is it might be cheaper up front, but then you've got to find something to fill the gaps. So there's a great analogy for this. It's like hiring a babysitter, and you look at two options. One of them says it's going to be £10 an hour, and the other says it will be £8 an hour. And you think, okay, I'll go for the cheaper one, I'll go for the 8 one. This is wind and solar. And you think it's cheaper up front, but then they tell you, I'm really sorry, sometimes I won't be there, I'll just disappear. When the wind stops blowing and the sun stops shining, I'll have to disappear. So you think, oh God, I'm going to have to find another babysitter. And that's also 8, and that's gas, right? And so this is why it doesn't actually end up cheaper. It might be cheaper to put a wind panel up or a wind turbine up, but you've got to build a whole new thing, either gas or batteries or nuclear to fill the gaps. So you need to look at the full system, and when you do, nuclear is one of the cheapest.
And another thing, the more you build, the faster you build, the better you build, and that's what happens. So if you start to build these things, you really do a better job, and that's the Japanese and the Koreans proved that in the 70s and 80s. Build, and they will come.
Do you have another question? Yes. I saw your hand earlier.
Hi, my name is George from the Dutch daily newspaper. And I have a question, which is, what would you say is the best argument that you heard while making this film against nuclear energy, and how would you counter that?
What is? Sorry, I didn't get it.
What's the strongest argument out there that is a good anti-argument? Yeah.
What is the strongest argument you have for nuclear?
Oh no, against. What's the strongest argument against?
You heard against.
I have no argument against nuclear energy. I think it is, as I said in the film, it is a gift. It was a gift from the gods. It was there at the beginning of the world. It's tied in with the sun. It's tied in with radiation itself. And radiation, by the way, when you have cancer, you certainly want radiation. And people get it for their thyroids, Radiation is also a friend. Everything in this world can be an enemy or it can be a friend. We've got to grow up. We've got to look to our origins. This planet provided the answers. We didn't listen. Americans get so fucking spoiled sometimes that when you talk nuclear to them, if you talk to a typical stupid American, he'll say, oh yeah, we tried nuclear. I remember that, yeah, I remember that, we tried it. It kind of had some problems, I forgot what they were, but we're on to this new thing with sun and wind, okay? That's the kind of ignorant argument you can get from some people, and that's what people, they don't remember. They don't remember.
Thank you so much. If you do have another question, the last question will be yours. Otherwise, I think most people have had the opportunity to ask a question, and some of you will have a one-on-one interview after this. So, please.
Yes, please. If we have to store nuclear waste for many thousands of years, how can we be sure that nothing will leak out in this incredibly long term?
How can we be sure what?
That nothing happens bad.
That what?
Nothing bad happens.
Nothing leaks out.
Well, you see, that's the problem. You see, you cannot provide 0%. There's always risk in everything. I can say this, that the waste is supervised at every cubic inch is accounted for. It really is the cleanest industry we have. It's because it's dangerous at first. Radioactive waste, if you go to the reactors, again, this is low-level radiation. This is not high-level radiation, okay? When you go to the reactors, you see that they put it at first in the water for sometimes for a year, sometimes more. Then they move it, some countries move it to casks, concrete and metal casks. These are 12 feet high, they're amazing, and they can hold the concrete is not a conductor of radiation. Concrete, what's the word? Eviscerates.
Insulates.
What?
Insulates. Yeah.
Insulates, that's the word. Insulates. So you can hold it in the cask for 100 years, they say, and then maybe transfer it to another cask for 100 years. And then the Finland and the U.S. military have been going into the ground and burying it in deep into the ground. Now, after 40 years, the radioactivity decays the fastest, one of the fastest. It's much quicker decay than other toxic products of industry. 40 years, after 40 years, it's 99% of its toxicity is done. So, you know, we're talking about climate change, which is here now. And you'll always find an environmentalist who'll tell you, well, 5,000 years from now, we're going to get haunted by this. I don't know. I don't think he's right. Because in Gabon, there was a huge radioactive material that never moved. It really stayed in one place for 1 million years. You know, yeah, it's in the earth. I don't see the natural danger of it. I don't. Do you have any other arguments?
I mean, you've got to actually ask yourself when you ask a question like that, what do you think nuclear waste looks like? When you say leak, that implies to me that you're imagining some green gloop. I've hugged a canister of nuclear waste, and it was nice. It was just a big concrete thing. Nuclear waste is actually nuclear spent fuel. It's little pellets of a metal, which, like metal, it's hard, doesn't leak anywhere. You encase it in stuff, you put it away. The minute you actually really see it, you see, oh yeah, this just isn't that scary. Then there's a matter of actually trusting the scientists on this, because we are in a technocratic society where we have to put our trust in people who actually know about this. And there are lots of people who actually know about this, and they've done the maths. And even if the most possibly catastrophic thing happened, and it cracked open in an earthquake, and somehow some mice got down there and picked up a pellet and took it up, and the whole thing smashed open, even then you could be living directly over a geological repository to this, and the maximum dose of additional radiation they've worked out you'd get is the equivalent of eating 2 bananas a year, which are radioactive, by the way. They've got a type of potassium in them that decays. So there's a point at which we've all got to be grown-ups. You can be hysterical about any level of risk. You can be hysterical about going on planes, but if you trust the experts on this, it's just not a risk. And so nuclear waste, for me, is actually one of the really big reasons to love nuclear energy. Compare it to any other waste form, so coal, oil, gas, your car, it belches its waste straight out into the atmosphere. This is a waste that you can pack away, you can keep safe, and you can use it again in some of the reactors that Oliver explores, like the fast breeder reactors. You've got more energy in there for the future. So it's a gift to the future rather than a risk.
Okay, I think we covered everything.
Thank you so much. Yes, I would like to end this press conference, unless you have some famous last words to say, Oliver.
What should you say?
To conclude, to say something.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you very much for your presence, and thank you, Oliver.